Don't talk. Homeless man saved female police. After he caught something shocking on the street. Rain had been falling for 3 straight hours when Officer Rachel Taus pulled her patrol car alongside the old pharmacy on Riverside Street. It was the kind of rain that turned everything gray, washing the color from the world and leaving only shadows and reflections on wet pavement. Rachel had been a police officer for 7 years, but tonight felt different. Something in the air made her neck prickle with unease. She had received a call about suspicious activity near the abandoned buildings on this block. But when she arrived, the street appeared empty except for the usual collection of society's forgotten souls huddled in doorways, trying to escape the downpour. That's when she saw him, a homeless man leaning against the brick wall of what used to be Miller's hardware store. His clothes hung on him like wet rags, torn and stained from countless nights on the street. His beard had grown wild and unkempt, streaked with gray, though he couldn't have been older than 45. Water dripped from his matted hair, creating small puddles at his feet. But it wasn't his appearance that made Rachel pause as she stepped out of her patrol car. It was his eyes. They burned with an intensity that seemed out of place on his weathered face, like someone had lit a fire behind them. Beside him, a scrappy brown dog with one ear torn and scarred sat alert, its muscles tensed as if ready to spring into action at any moment. "Don't talk. Just listen," the man whispered hoarsely, his voice barely audible above the sound of rain hitting the pavement. Rachel froze mid-step, her hand instinctively moving toward her holster. She had been trained to read situations quickly, to assess threats in seconds, but this man wasn't threatening her. He was warning her. The dog beside him let out a low, rumbling growl, its eyes fixed on something behind Rachel, something in the shadows of the alley between the pharmacy and the old hardware store. "Behind you," the man continued, his lips barely moving as if he was afraid someone might see him talking to her. "He's been waiting there. Watched you drive up. I saw him follow you from 2 blocks away." Rachel's training kicked in immediately. She didn't turn around abruptly, didn't give away that she had been warned. Instead, she casually adjusted her radio, using the reflection in her patrol car's window to scan the area behind her. The alley was dark, filled with overflowing dumpsters and piles of cardboard boxes that had turned to mush in the rain. She couldn't see anyone, but that didn't mean no one was there. The homeless man's dog continued to growl, the sound growing deeper and more threatening. Its hackles were raised, making it look twice its actual size. Rachel had learned to trust animal instincts. They could sense danger in ways humans couldn't. "How many?" she whispered back, pretending to check something on her duty belt. "Just one," the man replied. "Young guy, maybe 25. Been hanging around here for 3 days. He's got something in his hand. Can't tell what from here, but he's holding it close to his body." Rachel's mind raced through her options. She could call for backup, but that would take at least 5 minutes in this weather. She could confront whoever was in the alley, but without knowing what weapon they had, she'd be walking into danger blind. Or she could trust this homeless man, this stranger who had no reason to help her except basic human decency. She made her decision in a heartbeat. "When I move, you get behind my car," she told him quietly. "No," he said firmly, surprising her with the strength in his voice. "Luna and I aren't leaving you alone with him. We've seen what he does. 3 nights ago, he attacked a woman 2 blocks from here. Police never came in time. She barely got away." Luna, that must be the dog's name, barked once, sharp and fierce as if agreeing with her owner. Rachel's heart began to pound harder. If this person had already attacked someone, he was dangerous and desperate. She pressed her back against her patrol car, using it as cover while she reached for her radio. But before she could call for backup, she heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps splashing through puddles, moving fast. Someone was running toward her from the alley. "He's coming," the homeless man shouted, abandoning all pretense of secrecy. Rachel spun around, her hand on her weapon, just as a figure burst from the shadows. The man was exactly as the homeless man had described. Young, wild-eyed, and desperate. But what made Rachel's blood run cold was the knife in his hand, its blade catching the dim streetlight as he raised it high. Everything happened in slow motion and lightning speed at the same time. The attacker was only 10 feet away and closing fast. Rachel's training told her to draw her weapon, to stop the threat, but the homeless man moved faster than she expected. With a grunt of effort, he pushed himself off the wall and threw his body between Rachel and the attacker. The two men collided with a wet thud, both crashing to the rain-soaked pavement. Luna leaped into action, teeth bared, snapping at the attacker's legs. Rachel drew her gun but couldn't get a clear shot. The three figures were tangled together in a chaotic mass of limbs and fur. "Get off him!" she shouted, but the homeless man held on grimly, using his body weight to pin the attacker's knife hand to the ground. The blade slashed through the air, missing the homeless man's face by inches. Water splashed everywhere as they struggled, turning the fight into a desperate wrestling match on the wet street. Rachel circled them, looking for an opening, her heart hammering against her ribs. The attacker was younger and stronger, but the homeless man had the advantage of surprise and the help of his loyal dog. Luna had clamped her jaws on the attacker's ankle, causing him to scream in pain and rage. But he didn't let go of the knife. If anything, his desperation seemed to give him more strength. The homeless man's grip was slipping on the wet pavement. Rachel saw the knife beginning to rise again, aimed at the homeless man's chest. Without thinking, she fired a warning shot into the air. The crack of gunfire echoed off the buildings, momentarily stunning everyone into stillness. That moment was all the homeless man needed. With a final surge of strength, he wrenched the knife from the attacker's hand and sent it skittering across the pavement toward Rachel. She immediately kicked it far out of reach, then moved in with her handcuffs. Working together, she and the homeless man managed to flip the attacker onto his stomach. Rachel pressed her knee into his back, pulling his arms behind him and snapping the cuffs into place. The metallic click seemed to signal the end of the chaos. The attacker struggled for a few more seconds, cursing and spitting, but then seemed to deflate, all the fight going out of him. Rachel stood up slowly, her uniform soaked through, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. The homeless man rolled away from the attacker and sat on the wet pavement, breathing heavily. Luna immediately went to his side, licking his face and whimpering with concern. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were the rain hitting the pavement and their heavy breathing. Rachel looked at the homeless man, really looked at him for the first time. Beneath the dirt and the raggedy clothes, she saw someone who had just risked his life for a complete stranger. Someone who society had written off as worthless had just proven himself to be worth more than most people she knew. "You saved my life," she said quietly, the weight of those words settling over her like a heavy blanket. The man shrugged, wiping rain and dirt from his face with a trembling hand. "You would have done the same," he said simply. But Rachel wasn't so sure. How many times had she driven past homeless people without really seeing them? How many times had she assumed they were all drunks or addicts or lazy people who had given up on life? Rachel called for backup and an ambulance, keeping her gun trained on the handcuffed attacker who lay face down on the wet pavement, no longer struggling. Within minutes, the quiet street was filled with flashing lights and sirens. Other officers arrived, taking the attacker into custody. Paramedics checked everyone for injuries. The homeless man had a cut on his arm from the struggle, but he refused to go to the hospital. "Can't leave Luna," he said firmly, his arm around his dog. "She's all I've got." As the scene was being processed, Rachel learned more about what had happened. The attacker was named Derek Morrison, a 26-year-old with a history of mental illness and drug abuse. He had been stalking female police officers for weeks, believing they were part of some conspiracy against him. The homeless man had noticed him hanging around the area, watching and waiting. He had tried to warn other officers, but no one had taken him seriously. After all, who listens to a homeless man? "What's your name?" Rachel asked the man as he sat on the bumper of the ambulance, letting a paramedic clean the cut on his arm. "Marcus," he said. "Marcus Webb, and this is Luna. Found her as a puppy in a dumpster 2 years ago. We've been together ever since." Rachel sat down beside him, not caring that the wet bumper soaked through her uniform even more. "How did you know he was dangerous?" "How did you know he was following me?" Marcus looked at her with those intense eyes that had first caught her attention. When you live on the streets, you learn to watch people. You learn to read them. It's how you survive. That guy Derek, he wasn't right. The way he moved, the way he watched. I've seen that look before. Saw it in my unit in Afghanistan, right before things went bad. The pieces suddenly clicked into place for Rachel. The way Marcus had moved during the fight, the tactical thinking, the willingness to put himself in danger to protect others. This wasn't just any homeless man. This was a veteran, someone who had served his country and somehow ended up on the streets. "You're a vet," she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded slowly. 8 years in the army, 2 tours in Afghanistan. Came back different. Couldn't hold a job, couldn't sleep without nightmares. Lost my apartment, my family didn't understand. One day, I woke up on the streets, and I've been here ever since. 3 years now. Rachel felt something break inside her chest. Here was a man who had fought for his country, who had sacrificed everything, and society had abandoned him. Yet he had still chosen to risk his life to save hers. "That's not right," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You shouldn't be out here." Marcus smiled sadly. "A lot of things in this world aren't right, but you do what you can with what you've got. Luna and I, we watch out for people. It's not much, but it's something." The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. Other homeless people had emerged from their hiding spots, watching the scene with interest. Rachel noticed how they looked at Marcus with respect, even admiration. He wasn't just another forgotten soul on the streets. He was their protector, their guardian angel in raggedy clothes. Over the next hour, as statements were taken and evidence was collected, Rachel learned more about Marcus's life on the streets. He had created a network of homeless people who watched out for each other and for the community. They reported crimes, helped lost children find their parents, and kept an eye on dangerous individuals. But no one ever thanked them. No one even knew they existed. "We're invisible," Marcus explained. "People walk past us every day like we're not even human. But we see everything. We know every corner of this city, every dark alley, every dangerous spot. We could help so much if anyone would just listen." Rachel thought about all the times she had responded to calls in this area, all the times she had walked or driven past homeless people without a second thought. How much valuable information had she missed? How many crimes could have been prevented if the police had just taken the time to talk to these invisible guardians? As the crime scene was being wrapped up, Rachel's sergeant arrived. Sergeant James Patterson was a 20-year veteran with gray hair and a perpetual frown. He surveyed the scene, took in the reports, and then focused his attention on Marcus. "So, a homeless man saved one of my officers," he said, his tone unreadable. Marcus stood up straighter, meeting the sergeant's gaze without flinching. Luna growled softly, sensing potential threat. "He did more than save me," Rachel interjected. "He's been watching this guy for days, trying to warn us. If we had listened to him earlier, this might never have happened." The sergeant studied Marcus for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "You showed real courage tonight." Marcus shook his hand, surprised by the gesture. "Just did what anyone should do," he said. "No," the sergeant replied. "You did what most people wouldn't do. That makes all the difference." As the night wore on and the scene cleared, Rachel found herself reluctant to leave. She had offered to drive Marcus to a shelter, but he had declined. "Shelters are dangerous," he explained. "Too many desperate people in too small a space. Luna and I are safer out here, where we know the terrain." But Rachel couldn't just walk away. This man had saved her life. More than that, he had opened her eyes to a whole world she had been blind to. "Marcus," she said, pulling out her card, "I want you to have this. My direct number is on there. If you ever need anything, or if you see something that we should know about, call me, day or night." Marcus took the card carefully as if it was something precious. "You mean that?" he asked. "I mean it," Rachel said firmly, "and I'm going to talk to my sergeant about setting up some kind of program. Maybe we can have regular meetings with you and others who live out here. You could be our eyes and ears on the street. Paid consultants, maybe." Marcus's eyes widened. "You'd do that?" Rachel nodded. "You saved my life tonight. But more than that, you showed me how wrong I've been. How wrong we've all been. People like you have valuable knowledge and skills. We'd be stupid not to use them. As Rachel drove away that night, she watched in her rearview mirror as Marcus and Luna walked back to their spot against the wall. They looked small and vulnerable in the darkness, but she knew better now. They were warriors, guardians, protectors of a city that had forgotten them. The story of Don't Talk, homeless man saved female police after he caught something shocking on the street would become legend in the police department. But for Rachel, it was more than just a story. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that heroes come in all forms, and sometimes the people society values the least have the most to offer. Over the following weeks, Rachel kept her promise. She met with Marcus regularly, bringing him food and supplies for Luna. She learned about the other homeless veterans in the area, each with their own story of service and sacrifice. She pushed for the creation of a liaison program between the police and the homeless community. It wasn't easy. There was resistance from both sides. Many officers didn't want to deal with those people, and many homeless individuals didn't trust the police. But Marcus became the bridge between the two worlds. His credibility on the streets and his proven courage made him the perfect ambassador. Slowly, things began to change. Crimes were solved with information provided by the homeless network. Missing children were found faster. Drug dealers were identified and arrested. The invisible people of the city became valuable allies in the fight against crime. 3 months after that rainy night, Rachel stood in the community center watching Marcus receive a citizen's commendation for bravery. He had cleaned up for the occasion, showered, shaved, wearing a donated suit that almost fit. Luna sat proudly at his feet, wearing a new collar with a tag that read, "Hero Dog." The mayor spoke about courage and community, about how one person's actions can change everything. But Rachel barely heard the words. She was watching Marcus's face as he accepted the award. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked like he belonged somewhere. He looked like he mattered. After the ceremony, Marcus found Rachel in the crowd. "This is because of you," he said, holding up the commendation. "No," Rachel replied. "This is because of you. You were a hero long before that night. I just helped other people see it." Marcus smiled, a real smile that transformed his weathered face. "You know what the best part is?" he asked. "What?" Rachel said. "I'm not invisible anymore." As Rachel watched Marcus interact with other people at the reception, accepting congratulations, and telling his story, she thought about that night again. "Don't talk, just listen," he had said. It was advice that had saved her life, but it was also a larger message. Sometimes the most important voices are the ones we never stop to hear. Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the people we overlook every day. The program that grew from that night became a model for other cities. Homeless individuals were given phones to report crimes. They were paid small stipends for information that led to arrests. Some, like Marcus, were eventually hired as community liaisons. It wasn't a perfect solution to homelessness, but it was a start. It gave people dignity, purpose, and a voice. Marcus eventually got off the streets, thanks to a veterans program that Rachel helped him apply for. He got an apartment that allowed pets, so Luna could stay with him. He got counseling for his PTSD and started volunteering at the Veterans Center, helping other former soldiers who were struggling. But he never forgot his time on the streets or the people still living there. Every week, he and Luna would walk the old neighborhood, checking on friends, sharing information with the police, being the bridge between two worlds that rarely intersected. One day, almost a year after that fateful night, Rachel received a call from Marcus. "There's something you should see," he said. She met him at the old hardware store, the place where everything had started. But instead of the abandoned building she remembered, she found it transformed. The windows were clean, the walls freshly painted. A sign above the door read, "Second Chances Community Center." "What is this?" Rachel asked, amazed. "Some nonprofit bought the building," Marcus explained. "They're turning it into a day center for homeless individuals. Showers, laundry, job training, mental health services. They asked me to help run it." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. "That's amazing, Marcus." "The best part," Marcus continued, "is that they want to put a plaque by the door. Something about how a homeless man saved a police officer here, and how that one act of courage changed everything." He paused, looking at the building with pride. "They want to call it the Don't Talk, Just Listen Center." Rachel laughed through her tears. "That's perfect," she said. As they stood there, watching workers prepare the building for its new purpose, Luna sat between them, tail wagging. The dog had been the first to sense danger that night, the first to know that something was wrong. In a way, she had saved them both. "You know," Marcus said thoughtfully, "I used to think my life was over when I ended up on the streets. I thought I had nothing left to contribute. But maybe everything happens for a reason. Maybe I had to lose everything to find my real purpose." Rachel nodded. "You saved my life, Marcus. But more than that, you changed it. You changed how I see the world, how I see people. That's a gift I can never repay." Marcus smiled that transformative smile again. "You already have," he said. "You listened. You saw me as a person, not just a problem. That's all any of us really want. To be seen, to be heard, to matter." As the sun set over the city, casting golden light on the renovated building, Rachel thought about how one moment of courage could ripple outward, creating waves of change. The story of Don't Talk, homeless man saved female police after he caught something shocking on the street, had become more than just an incident report. It had become a catalyst for transformation, proof that heroes exist in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply listen to those whom society has forgotten. Years later, when Rachel had been promoted to captain and Marcus had become a nationally recognized advocate for homeless veterans, they would still meet at that spot where it all began. They would remember that rainy night when a warning from a homeless man had prevented a tragedy, when an act of selfless courage had bridged the gap between two different worlds. The community center thrived, helping hundreds of people get back on their feet. The police liaison program expanded to include not just homeless individuals but also other marginalized communities. Crime rates in the area dropped significantly, and the relationship between law enforcement and the community improved dramatically. Marcus often spoke at police academies and community events, sharing his story and his message. Every person has value. Every person has something to contribute. Sometimes the people who seem to have the least actually have the most to give. We just have to be willing to listen. Luna lived to the remarkable age of 15, remaining Marcus's faithful companion through all the changes. When she finally passed, the entire police department attended her memorial service. She was honored as a hero dog who had helped save a police officer and transform a community. A statue of Luna was placed in front of the community center, with a plaque that read, "In memory of Luna, who saw danger when others saw nothing, who protected when she had nothing to gain, and who proved that loyalty and courage know no social boundaries." The night of that first incident had started with rain and danger, with fear and violence. But it had ended with connection, understanding, and the beginning of something beautiful. It proved that sometimes the most profound changes come from the most unexpected sources, and that heroes don't always wear uniforms or carry badges. Sometimes they wear torn clothes and sleep on cardboard. Sometimes they have 4 legs and torn ears. Sometimes they are the people we walk past every day without seeing, the invisible guardians of our cities who ask for nothing but give everything when it matters most. The story of how a homeless man saved a female police officer became more than just a tale of one night's heroism. It became a testament to the power of human compassion, the importance of seeing beyond surface appearances, and the truth that everyone has the potential to be someone's hero. As Rachel often said when telling the story to new recruits, "That night taught me the most important lesson of my career. Don't just talk, listen. Don't just look, see. Don't just pass by, stop and connect. Because you never know when the person you ignore might be the one who saves your life, or when the person you help might be the one who changes your world." The abandoned buildings on Riverside Street were eventually all renovated, turned into affordable housing and community services. The area that had once been known for crime and despair became a model of urban renewal and community cooperation. And at the center of it all was the story of Marcus and Luna, the homeless man and his dog who had refused to be invisible when it mattered most. Marcus never forgot what it felt like to be invisible, to be dismissed and overlooked. Even as his life improved and his influence grew, he remained humble and committed to helping others who were where he had once been. He established a foundation that provided services specifically for homeless veterans, understanding their unique challenges and needs. He worked with mental health professionals to develop programs that addressed PTSD and other issues that often led veterans to the streets. The foundation was named Second Watch, a military term that Marcus felt captured the idea of continued vigilance and service even after official duty had ended. The ripple effects of that single night continued to spread. Other cities implemented similar programs, creating partnerships between law enforcement and homeless communities. Academic studies were conducted on the effectiveness of these initiatives, showing significant improvements in both crime prevention and community relations. Marcus was invited to testify before Congress about the needs of homeless veterans and the untapped potential of homeless individuals as community resources. His testimony, delivered with the same quiet intensity that had caught Rachel's attention that first night, led to increased funding for veteran services and homeless outreach programs. But perhaps the most important change was in the countless individual interactions that happened every day. Police officers who had heard the story began to see homeless individuals differently. They stopped to talk, to listen, to learn. They discovered, as Rachel had, that these people had names, stories, skills, and wisdom. They found informants, witnesses, and allies in unexpected places. The story also changed how many homeless individuals viewed law enforcement. Marcus's example showed that cooperation was possible, that police officers could be allies rather than enemies. The liaison program gave them a voice and a way to contribute to their communities, even while struggling with their own challenges. It restored a sense of purpose and dignity that many had lost. Rachel, for her part, never forgot the lesson of that night. Throughout her career, she championed community policing initiatives that emphasized connection and communication over confrontation. She required all officers under her command to spend time volunteering at the community center, to see the human faces behind the statistics and stereotypes. She often said that Marcus had taught her more about effective policing in one night than she had learned in years of training. Years went by and the neighborhood continued to transform. The community center expanded, offering more services and programs. The area became known as a success story, a place where different parts of society had learned to work together for the common good. Tour groups came to learn about the innovative programs. Documentary filmmakers told the story of the transformation. But at its heart, it remained a simple story about human courage and compassion, about seeing the value in every person. Marcus eventually wrote a book about his experiences, titled Invisible Warriors: The Hidden Heroes Among Us. It became a bestseller, with proceeds going to support homeless services. In it, he wrote about that night, about Rachel, about Luna, and about all the invisible people who stand guard over our cities, unrecognized and unrewarded. He dedicated the book to all those who see when others look away, who act when others walk by, and who prove every day that heroism has no address. The book opened with the story of that rainy night, with the words that had started everything. Don't talk, just listen. It was a message that resonated with readers across the country, reminding them to pay attention to the wisdom and warnings that come from unexpected sources. Rachel wrote the foreword to the book, describing how that night had changed her life and her perspective on policing. She wrote about the courage it takes to survive on the streets, the strength required to maintain humanity in inhuman conditions, and the heroism of those who protect others when they have nothing to protect themselves with. The success of the book led to speaking engagements across the country. Marcus would stand before audiences of police officers, social workers, politicians, and ordinary citizens, telling his story with the same quiet intensity that had saved Rachel's life. He would talk about the importance of seeing people, really seeing them, not just looking through them. He would share stories of other homeless individuals who had performed acts of heroism, who had saved lives, solved crimes, and protected communities, all while being invisible to most of society. As the 10th anniversary of that night approached, the city decided to hold a celebration at the community center. It was a chance to recognize how far they had come and to honor those who had made the transformation possible. Marcus and Rachel were the guests of honor, but they insisted that the real heroes were the hundreds of homeless individuals who had participated in the liaison program over the years, who had shared information, prevented crimes, and helped build bridges between different parts of the community. The celebration was attended by city officials, police officers, social workers, formerly homeless individuals who had gotten back on their feet, and current members of the homeless community. It was a diverse gathering that would have seemed impossible 10 years earlier. The mayor spoke about the power of partnership and the importance of including all members of society in community safety efforts. The police chief presented statistics showing how crime had decreased and community trust had increased since the implementation of the liaison program. But the most moving moment came when a young girl, maybe 8 years old, approached the microphone. She explained that 2 years earlier, she had gotten separated from her mother at a crowded festival. She had been terrified, lost in a sea of strangers. A homeless woman had found her, comforted her, and stayed with her until police arrived to reunite her with her mother. That woman was in the audience, now housed and working as a peer counselor at the community center. The girl ran to her and hugged her, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. That moment encapsulated everything that had changed since that rainy night when Marcus had whispered his warning to Rachel. It showed that the invisible people had become visible, that the forgotten had been remembered, and that the dismissed had been recognized as valuable members of the community. As the celebration continued, Marcus stood with Rachel, watching the crowd mingle and interact. Police officers chatted with formerly homeless individuals. Social workers compared notes with current members of the street community. Children played with Luna's successor, a rescue dog that Marcus had trained to be a therapy animal for the community center. "Did you ever imagine it would lead to this?" Rachel asked. Marcus shook his head. "I just wanted to keep you from getting hurt," he said. "I never thought about what would come after." "That's what makes it so powerful," Rachel replied. "You didn't do it for recognition or reward. You did it because it was right. That's true heroism." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know what I think about sometimes? All the other cities where this isn't happening. All the other homeless people with skills and knowledge that no one is using. All the other police officers who could benefit from those extra eyes and ears. All the missed opportunities for connection and cooperation." Rachel nodded. "That's why we keep telling the story. That's why we keep spreading the word. Change happens one person at a time, one connection at a time, one moment of courage at a time." As the evening drew to a close, Marcus was asked to say a few words. He stood at the podium, looking out at the diverse crowd, and began to speak. 10 years ago, I was invisible. I was one of those people you pass on the street without seeing, one of those problems you hope someone else will solve. I had given up on society, and society had given up on me. But then one night, in the rain, I saw something that needed to be done, and I did it. Not because I was brave, but because I was there, and because despite everything, I still believed that people should look out for each other. He paused, gathering his thoughts. That night taught me something important. Being invisible doesn't mean being worthless. Having nothing doesn't mean having nothing to give. Every person, no matter their circumstances, has the potential to make a difference. Sometimes the smallest actions create the biggest changes. Sometimes a whispered warning can transform a community. He looked at Rachel, who smiled encouragingly. Officer Taus, Captain Taus now, didn't just thank me that night and move on. She saw me. She listened to me. She believed that I and others like me had something valuable to contribute. That recognition, that validation, that opportunity to matter again, that saved me as much as I saved her. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Today, we celebrate not just one act of courage, but thousands of acts by hundreds of people who chose to see beyond appearances, to reach across divides, to build bridges instead of walls. We celebrate a community that learned to use all its resources, including the ones that were hiding in plain sight. We celebrate the proof that everyone matters, everyone has value, and everyone can be a hero. He raised his glass of water in a toast. To the invisible warriors among us, may they always be seen. To the forgotten heroes, may they always be remembered. To the dismissed and overlooked, may they always be heard. And to everyone here tonight, may you always remember to stop, look, and listen. You never know when the person you ignore might be the one who changes everything. The applause was thunderous. People stood, cheering and crying. Marcus stepped down from the podium and was immediately surrounded by people wanting to shake his hand, to thank him, to share their own stories. Through it all, Rachel watched with pride. She thought about that night, about how close she had come to disaster, about how a homeless man and his dog had saved her life. But more than that, she thought about how that moment had revealed a truth that had always been there, waiting to be discovered. That heroes exist everywhere, in every social class, in every circumstance. They just need the opportunity to reveal themselves. As the celebration ended and people began to leave, Marcus and Rachel found themselves back outside, standing in the spot where it had all happened. The street was well lit now, safe and clean. The community center glowed with warm light, its doors open to anyone who needed help. "Thank you," Rachel said simply. "For everything," Marcus smiled. "Thank you for listening," he replied. "That's all I asked for that night. Don't talk. Just listen." You did, and look what happened. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Two people from different worlds who had found common ground in an act of courage and compassion. Then Marcus spoke again. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" Rachel asked. "This isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. Every day, in cities across the country, there are invisible people waiting to be seen, waiting to contribute, waiting to matter. Every day, there are opportunities for connection and cooperation that we're missing. Every day, there are potential heroes walking past other potential heroes, not recognizing each other." He turned to look at Rachel directly. The story of "Don't Talk, Homeless Man Saved Female Police After He Caught Something Shocking on the Street" isn't just our story anymore. It's a reminder to everyone that heroes come in all forms, that wisdom comes from unexpected sources, and that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply stop and listen. Rachel nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Their story had become larger than them, a symbol of what was possible when people looked beyond stereotypes and prejudices to see the human being underneath. It was a story that would continue to inspire change, to build bridges, and to remind people that everyone has something valuable to offer. As they parted ways that night, Rachel heading home to her family and Marcus returning to his apartment with his new therapy dog, both carried with them the knowledge that they had been part of something special. They had proven that one moment of courage, one act of compassion, one decision to see and be seen, could change not just two lives but an entire community. The story would be told for years to come, in police academies and social work programs, in churches and community centers, wherever people needed to be reminded that heroes don't always wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes they wear torn clothes and sleep under bridges. Sometimes they have 4 legs and scarred ears. Sometimes they are the people we least expect, waiting for their moment to step out of the shadows and into the light. And always, always, they remind us that the most powerful words we can hear are sometimes the simplest. Don't talk, just listen. Because in that listening, in that moment of truly hearing another human being, we open the door to understanding, connection, and transformation. We discover that the invisible are visible, the worthless are valuable, and the forgotten are unforgettable. We learn that everyone has a story, everyone has something to contribute, and everyone, no matter their circumstances, has the potential to be someone's hero. The rain that had fallen that night 10 years ago had washed away more than just the dirt from the streets. It had washed away preconceptions, prejudices, and the barriers that separate us. In its place had grown something beautiful, a community that saw all its members, that valued all contributions, and that understood that true safety comes not from division but from connection. Marcus often said that he had been saved twice that night, once from the streets when Rachel saw his value, and once from invisibility when she gave him a voice. But Rachel knew the truth. They had saved each other. In that moment of mutual courage and trust, they had discovered that the real danger wasn't in the dark alleys or the desperate people with knives. The real danger was in not seeing each other, in walking past each other without connection, in allowing fellow human beings to become invisible. As the years continued to pass, the impact of their stories spread like ripples on a pond. Universities conducted studies on the program, documenting its success and creating blueprints for other cities to follow. The model of using homeless individuals as community resources became known as the Marcus method, though Marcus himself always insisted it should be called the community method, because it took everyone working together to make it successful. Police departments from around the world sent representatives to learn about the program. Social workers came to study the integration techniques. City planners examined how the physical transformation of the neighborhood had accompanied the social transformation. The old pharmacy where Rachel had parked her car that night became a medical clinic offering free services to homeless individuals. The alley where the attacker had hidden was transformed into a community garden, where formerly homeless individuals grew vegetables for the local food bank. Marcus continued to work at the community center, but his influence extended far beyond its walls. He developed training programs for police officers, teaching them how to interact with homeless populations effectively and respectfully. He created workshops for homeless individuals, helping them understand their rights and how to communicate with law enforcement safely. He established support groups for veterans experiencing homelessness, providing the understanding and connection that had been missing when he first found himself on the streets. These groups met weekly in the community center, sharing stories, resources, and hope. Many veterans who had felt forgotten by society found new purpose in helping others who were going through similar struggles. The groups became so successful that they expanded to other cities, creating a network of support that stretched across the country. Rachel's career continued to flourish, but she never forgot the lessons of that night. As she rose through the ranks, she implemented policies that emphasized community engagement and the value of every citizen's contribution to public safety. She required all new officers to spend time volunteering with homeless services as part of their training. She established regular meetings between police leadership and representatives from marginalized communities. She created awards and recognition programs for citizens who assisted in public safety, ensuring that acts of courage from unexpected sources would always be acknowledged and celebrated. Under her leadership, the police department became a model for community-oriented policing, with delegations visiting from around the world to learn about their approach. One of the most significant changes was in how the city approached homelessness itself. Instead of seeing it as a problem to be hidden or pushed away, the city began to see it as a challenge that required compassion, resources, and innovative solutions. The success of the liaison program had shown that homeless individuals could be valuable contributors to society if given the opportunity. This led to increased funding for housing programs, mental health services, and job training. The city established a Housing First initiative that provided stable housing without preconditions, recognizing that people needed a safe place to live before they could address other challenges in their lives. The program was expensive, but the reduction in emergency service calls, crime, and hospital visits more than made up for the cost. Marcus was appointed to the city's Commission on Homelessness, becoming the first formerly homeless person to serve in that capacity. His insights and experiences brought a perspective that had been missing from policy discussions. He pushed for programs that treated homeless individuals with dignity and respect, that recognized their strengths as well as their needs, and that provided opportunities for them to contribute to their communities. He often reminded the Commission that homeless people weren't problems to be solved, but human beings with potential to be unlocked. His presence on the commission changed the entire dynamic of how policies were developed and implemented. 5 years after the program began, a documentary filmmaker approached Marcus and Rachel about telling their story in detail. The resulting film, Invisible Warriors, premiered at major film festivals and eventually was broadcast nationally. It followed several homeless individuals who participated in the liaison program, showing their daily lives, their contributions to public safety, and their journeys toward stability. The film won numerous awards and sparked national conversations about homelessness, public safety, and the value of every member of society. Marcus and Rachel traveled to screenings, participating in panel discussions and Q&A sessions. They met with mayors, police chiefs, and social service directors from cities across the country, all eager to implement similar programs. But perhaps the most meaningful moments came when they met with homeless individuals who had been inspired by their story. In city after city, they heard from people who had found the courage to reach out to police, to offer their help, to believe that they had something valuable to contribute. They heard from police officers who had changed how they viewed homeless populations, who had discovered valuable allies in unexpected places. They heard from communities that had been transformed by the simple act of seeing and valuing all their members. Each story reinforced the power of that initial moment when Marcus had warned Rachel about the danger lurking in the shadows. The program faced challenges, of course. Not every interaction between police and homeless individuals went smoothly. There were misunderstandings, conflicts, and setbacks. Some people on both sides remained skeptical and resistant to change. There were times when the old prejudices and fears resurfaced, threatening to undo the progress that had been made. But Marcus and Rachel had established a foundation of trust and communication that helped weather these storms. When problems arose, they were addressed openly and honestly. When mistakes were made, they were acknowledged and learned from. The program evolved and improved based on feedback from all participants. One particularly challenging situation arose when a homeless man with mental illness provided false information that led to an innocent person being questioned by police. Some officers wanted to end the liaison program, arguing that homeless individuals couldn't be trusted. But Marcus and Rachel worked together to address the situation. They implemented better verification procedures, provided mental health training for liaison participants, and established support systems for individuals with mental illness who wanted to help. The incident, rather than destroying the program, actually made it stronger and more effective. As Marcus's story became more widely known, he received offers from universities to speak, from publishers to write more books, from organizations to become their spokesperson. He accepted some of these opportunities, always donating the proceeds to homeless services, but he never strayed far from the community center that had become his second home. He knew that his credibility and effectiveness came from staying connected to the streets, from maintaining relationships with current homeless individuals, from never forgetting where he had been. Every morning, he and his therapy dog would walk the old routes, checking on friends, gathering information, being a bridge between worlds. The therapy dog program that Marcus had started became another unexpected success. He trained rescue dogs to provide emotional support at the community center, in hospitals, and in schools. Many of these dogs were, like Luna had been, rescues that others had given up on. Marcus saw the parallel between the dogs and the homeless individuals he worked with, both discarded by society, both capable of so much more than anyone realized. The dogs became ambassadors for the program, helping to break down barriers and create connections. Children who might have been afraid of homeless individuals were drawn to the gentle dogs, creating opportunities for interaction and understanding. Rachel often reflected on how different her life and career might have been if Marcus hadn't warned her that night, not just because she might have been injured or killed, but because she would have missed the opportunity to see beyond her assumptions and prejudices. She would have continued to drive past homeless individuals without really seeing them. She would have missed the incredible resource that existed in plain sight. She would have had a successful but conventional career, never knowing what transformative change was possible. The night that could have ended in tragedy had instead opened a door to possibilities she never could have imagined. The 10th anniversary celebration had been a milestone, but it wasn't an ending. If anything, it marked a new beginning, a renewed commitment to the principles that had emerged from that rainy night. The city announced expanded funding for the liaison program and plans to build additional community centers in other neighborhoods. The police department established a permanent unit dedicated to community engagement, with officers specially trained to work with marginalized populations. The success of the program inspired state legislation that provided funding for similar initiatives in other cities. Marcus was invited to testify before the state legislature, where he spoke eloquently about the untapped potential in homeless communities and the importance of inclusive public safety strategies. One of the most moving developments came when Derek Morrison, the man who had attacked Rachel that night, was released from prison after serving his sentence. He had received treatment for his mental illness and substance abuse issues while incarcerated. Upon his release, he sought out Marcus and Rachel to apologize and to thank them. He explained that the incident had been a turning point for him, forcing him to confront his problems and get help. He wanted to make amends by volunteering at the community center, helping others who were struggling with similar issues. It was a complicated situation, but after much discussion, it was decided that Derek could volunteer under supervision, sharing his story as a cautionary tale and showing that redemption was possible even for those who had done wrong. The community center established a restorative justice program, bringing together offenders and victims to heal and move forward. Derek became a powerful speaker in this program, taking responsibility for his actions while also highlighting the importance of mental health services and early intervention. His presence was controversial at first, but over time, he proved his commitment to making amends and helping others avoid his mistakes. Marcus often said that if someone like Derek could change, anyone could change. It became another example of the transformative power of seeing people as more than their worst moments. As the years passed, the neighborhood that had once been known for crime and despair became a model of urban renewal and community cooperation. Property values increased, but the city implemented policies to prevent displacement of long-term residents. The community center expanded to include affordable housing units, ensuring that as the neighborhood improved, it remained accessible to those who had called it home during its darkest days. The mix of formerly homeless individuals, working families, young professionals, and longtime residents created a diverse and vibrant community that celebrated its differences, rather than fearing them. Marcus eventually met someone special, a social worker named Patricia who volunteered at the community center. She had been drawn to the work after seeing the documentary about Marcus and Rachel's story. Their relationship developed slowly, built on shared values and mutual respect. Patricia understood Marcus's commitment to his work and his community. She supported his continued involvement with the homeless population, often joining him on his morning walks. Their wedding was held at the community center, with a guest list that included police officers, city officials, formerly homeless individuals, and current members of the street community. Luna's successor served as the ring bearer, and Rachel stood as Marcus's best person, a role that perfectly captured their unique friendship. The story of Don't Talk. Homeless man saved female police. After he caught something shocking on the street, continued to inspire long after the principal players had moved on to new chapters in their lives. It became required reading in police academies and social work programs. It was cited in academic papers about community policing and homeless services. It was referenced in policy debates about public safety and social services. But more importantly, it lived on in the countless daily interactions between police officers and homeless individuals, in the moments of recognition and respect, in the opportunities for contribution and connection. Rachel eventually retired as chief of police, having transformed the department into a national model for community-oriented policing. In her farewell speech, she returned to that night, to Marcus's warning, to the moment that changed everything. She spoke about the importance of listening, of seeing beyond appearances, of recognizing the value in every person. She challenged the next generation of officers to continue building bridges, to keep their eyes and ears open to unexpected sources of wisdom and help. She reminded them that their job wasn't just to enforce the law, but to serve and protect all members of the community, including those who might seem to have nothing to offer. Marcus continued his work well into his 70s, becoming an elder statesman of the movement he had helped create. He mentored young people who were experiencing homelessness, sharing his story and his wisdom. He advised cities around the world on implementing similar programs. He wrote more books, gave more speeches, and received more awards than he ever could have imagined during those dark days on the streets. But he never forgot who he was and where he came from. Every morning, rain or shine, he could be found walking the streets with his dog, checking on friends, gathering information, being the bridge between worlds that he had become that fateful night. The community center that had grown from that single incident became a permanent institution, serving thousands of people each year. It offered everything from emergency shelter to job training, from mental health services to children's programs. The walls were covered with photos and stories of transformation, people who had gone from the streets to stability, from invisibility to visibility, from hopelessness to purpose. And at the center of it all was a simple plaque with the words that had started everything. "Don't talk, just listen." It served as a reminder that the most profound changes often begin with the simplest acts of human recognition and compassion. In schools throughout the city, children learned about Marcus and Rachel's story as a part of their civic education. They visited the community center, met with formerly homeless individuals, and learned to see beyond stereotypes and assumptions. These children grew up with a different understanding of homelessness and public safety, seeing both as community responsibilities that required everyone's participation. They learned that heroes could be anyone, that everyone had something valuable to contribute, and that the strongest communities were those that included and valued all their members. The generational impact of this education would be felt for decades to come. The transformation wasn't limited to one city. The model spread across the country and around the world. Cities in Europe, Asia, and South America implemented versions of the program, adapting it to their local contexts and cultures. International conferences were held to share best practices and lessons learned. Marcus and Rachel became global ambassadors for inclusive public safety and community engagement. They traveled to cities struggling with similar issues, sharing their story and providing guidance on implementation. They saw the same transformation repeated again and again. Invisible people becoming visible, forgotten voices being heard, dismissed individuals being recognized as valuable contributors. One particularly meaningful moment came when Marcus received a letter from a homeless veteran in another city who had been inspired by his story. The veteran had approached his local police department, offering to help keep watch in a dangerous area. Initially met with skepticism, he persisted, eventually proving his value by preventing several crimes and helping to locate missing children. His city had now implemented a full liaison program, and he had been hired as a coordinator. He wrote to thank Marcus for showing him that he still had something to offer, that his life still had purpose and meaning. Marcus kept that letter, along with hundreds of others like it, as reminders of the ripple effects of that single night's courage. As the 15th anniversary of the incident approached, the city announced plans for a permanent memorial at the site where it had happened. The memorial would honor not just Marcus and Rachel, but all the invisible heroes who had contributed to public safety over the years. It would include a wall where people could share their own stories of unexpected help, of bridges built across social divides, of moments when someone saw beyond appearances to the human being underneath. The memorial would serve as a reminder that heroism exists everywhere, waiting to be recognized and celebrated. It would challenge visitors to look for heroes in unexpected places, to listen to voices they might normally ignore, to see the value in every person they encountered. The memorial's dedication ceremony brought together thousands of people from all walks of life. Marcus and Rachel stood together, older now but still committed to the cause that had brought them together. They unveiled the memorial's centerpiece, a bronze sculpture depicting two figures, one in uniform and one in tattered clothes, standing together and looking out over the city. At the base of the sculpture were the words that had become a rallying cry for change. Don't talk, just listen. In listening, we find wisdom. In seeing, we find heroes. In connecting, we find community. The sculpture captured the essence of what had happened that night and what had grown from it. The recognition that safety, community, and human dignity were intertwined, that they required everyone's participation and contribution. As Marcus stood before the crowd at the dedication, he thought about all the people who had been part of this journey, not just Rachel, though she had been crucial, but all the homeless individuals who had found the courage to step forward and help, all the police officers who had overcome their prejudices to see homeless people as allies rather than problems, all the social workers, volunteers, and community members who had worked to build bridges across social divides, all the formerly homeless individuals who had gotten back on their feet and were now helping others do the same. This wasn't just his story or Rachel's story, it was everyone's story, a testament to what was possible when people chose to see and value each other. In his speech at the dedication, Marcus returned to that night 15 years earlier. He spoke about the fear he had felt, not just of the attacker but of being dismissed, of not being believed, of having his warning ignored because of who he was. He spoke about the split-second decision to act, to put himself at risk for someone who represented the very system that had often treated him as less than human. He spoke about Rachel's courage in trusting him, in seeing past his appearance to recognize the truth of his warning. And he spoke about everything that had grown from that moment, the programs, the policies, the changed lives, the transformed communities. But most importantly, he spoke about hope, hope that people could change, that communities could transform, that bridges could be built across even the widest social divides. 15 years ago, Marcus said, his voice carrying across the crowd, I was invisible. I was one of those people you hurry past on the street, one of those problems you hope someone else will deal with. I had no home, no hope, no purpose. But I still had eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart that believed people should look out for each other. That night, when I saw danger approaching Officer Taus, I had a choice. I could have stayed silent, stayed invisible, stayed safe. But something inside me said that her life mattered more than my invisibility, that her safety was worth the risk of being dismissed or ignored. He paused, looking at Rachel, who smiled with tears in her eyes. What I didn't know was that in that moment of choosing to be visible, of choosing to matter, I would start a chain of events that would transform not just my life, but countless others. That simple warning, don't talk, just listen, became the foundation for a movement that has spread across the world. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Marcus continued, but here's what I want you to understand. I'm not special. I'm not unique. Every day, in every city, there are invisible people with something valuable to offer. There are forgotten voices with important things to say. There are dismissed individuals with skills and knowledge that could benefit us all. They're waiting to be seen, waiting to be heard, waiting to matter. And every day, we have the choice to see them or look through them, to hear them or ignore them, to include them or exclude them. He gestured to the memorial behind him. This memorial isn't just about what happened that night. It's about what can happen any night, any day, when we choose to see each other as human beings, when we choose to value every member of our community, when we choose to believe that everyone has something to contribute. Marcus's speech received a standing ovation, but, more importantly, it sparked countless conversations and commitments. People approached him afterward, sharing their own stories of unexpected help, of prejudices overcome, of connections made across social divides. Police officers spoke about homeless individuals who had become their most valuable informants. Social workers shared stories of transformation and redemption. Formerly homeless individuals talked about finding purpose and dignity through the liaison program. Current homeless individuals expressed hope that they too could contribute, could matter, could be seen. The dedication ceremony became not just a commemoration of the past, but a commitment to the future. As the sun set on the dedication day, Marcus and Rachel stood together at the memorial, watching as people placed flowers and notes at its base. Many of the notes were addressed to the unknown heroes, thanking the invisible people who watched over the city, who helped without recognition, who proved every day that heroism has no address. Others were promises to look closer, to listen better, to see the invisible and hear the forgotten. Some were apologies from people who realized they had walked past potential heroes every day without seeing them. The memorial was already becoming what they had hoped, a place of recognition, reflection, and commitment to change. That night, as Marcus walked home with Patricia and their dog, he thought about how far he had come from that rainy night 15 years ago. He had gone from invisible to visible, from forgotten to remembered, from dismissed to valued. But more importantly, he had helped others make the same journey. He had shown that everyone had something to offer, that the most unexpected people could be heroes, that the strongest communities were those that valued all their members. The story of Don't Talk, homeless man saved female police. After he caught something shocking on the street had become more than just an incident report or a news story. It had become a parable for our times, a reminder of what we lose when we allow people to become invisible, and what we gain when we choose to see them. As the years continued to pass, the memorial became a pilgrimage site for people seeking hope and inspiration. Stories were shared there of other invisible heroes: the homeless woman who had returned a wallet full of cash, the street vendor who had stopped a kidnapping, the undocumented immigrant who had saved children from a burning building. Each story reinforced the truth that Marcus and Rachel had discovered that night. Heroes exist everywhere, in every social class, in every circumstance. We just have to be willing to see them. The memorial's wall filled with these stories, creating a tapestry of human courage and compassion that transcended social boundaries and challenged assumptions about worth and value. 20 years after that fateful night, Marcus passed away peacefully in his sleep. His funeral was attended by thousands: police officers, social workers, formerly homeless individuals, city officials, and ordinary citizens whose lives had been touched by his story and his work. Rachel, now in her 70s, gave the eulogy. She spoke about the man who had saved her life, but more importantly, about the man who had changed countless lives through his courage, compassion, and commitment to seeing the value in everyone. She spoke about his legacy, not just the programs and policies that bore his influence, but the fundamental shift in how communities understood public safety and human dignity. She ended with the words that had started it all: "Don't talk, just listen." Marcus taught us to listen, and in listening, we heard the voices of heroes we never knew existed. Marcus was buried in the city cemetery, but his true memorial was in the streets he had once walked as an invisible man. Those streets were now safer, not because of increased police presence or tougher laws, but because the community had learned to see and value all its members. The homeless individuals who still lived on those streets were no longer invisible. They were recognized as the eyes and ears of the community, as people with dignity and purpose, as potential heroes waiting for their moment. The liaison program continued to thrive. It's expanding and evolving, but always maintaining the core principle that Marcus had demonstrated. Everyone has something valuable to contribute. Rachel lived for another 10 years, continuing to advocate for inclusive public safety and community engagement. She wrote a book about her experience, titling it "The Night I Learned to Listen." In it, she reflected on how one moment of openness to an unexpected source of help had transformed not just her life, but her entire understanding of policing and community. She wrote about the courage it takes to see beyond appearances, to challenge assumptions, to build bridges across social divides. She dedicated the book to Marcus and to all the invisible heroes who protect our communities without recognition or reward. The book became required reading in police academies across the country, ensuring that future generations of officers would understand the value of listening to all voices, especially the ones that are easiest to ignore. The story of how a homeless man saved a female police officer continued to resonate long after both Marcus and Rachel were gone. It was taught in schools as an example of civic responsibility and human dignity. It was cited in policy debates about homelessness, public safety, and social services. It was referenced in sermons and speeches about seeing the divine in every person. It was shared around campfires and dinner tables as a reminder that heroes come in all forms. But most importantly, it lived on in the daily actions of people who chose to see rather than overlook, to listen rather than dismiss, to include rather than exclude. The community center that had grown from that night's events eventually expanded into a network of centers across the city, each one serving as a hub for services, support, and community engagement. The walls of each center displayed the same simple message: don't talk, just listen. It had become more than just advice about situational awareness. It had become a philosophy of life, a reminder that wisdom comes from unexpected sources, that everyone has a story worth hearing, that the most important voices are often the quietest ones. The centers served thousands of people each year, but their true impact was in changing how the city understood community, safety, and human value. The liaison program that Marcus had helped create became a model studied in universities and implemented in cities around the world. Academic papers were written about its effectiveness in reducing crime, building community trust, and providing dignity and purpose to marginalized populations. But the program's success couldn't be measured just in statistics and studies. Its true success was in the countless moments of connection and recognition, the bridges built across social divides, the lives transformed by the simple act of being seen and valued. Every homeless person who provided information that solved a crime, every police officer who saw homeless individuals as allies rather than problems, every community member who stopped to listen rather than hurrying past, they were all part of Marcus's legacy. As the 25th anniversary of that night approached, the city announced plans for a Marcus Webb Day, to be celebrated annually on the anniversary of the incident. It would be a day dedicated to recognizing invisible heroes, to building bridges across social divides, to remembering that everyone has something valuable to contribute. Schools would hold assemblies about inclusion and human dignity. Police departments would host community engagement events. Social service organizations would highlight the contributions of their clients to community safety and well-being. It would be a day to challenge assumptions, to see beyond appearances, to listen to voices that might otherwise go unheard. The first Marcus Webb Day was celebrated with events throughout the city. The morning began with a moment of silence at the memorial, remembering not just Marcus but all the invisible heroes who had passed without recognition. This was followed by a march from the memorial to the community center, with participants carrying signs that read, "Everyone matters," "See the invisible," and "Heroes have no address." The march included police officers, homeless individuals, city officials, school children, and ordinary citizens, all walking together in recognition of their shared humanity and mutual responsibility for community safety and well-being. At the community center, there was a fair showcasing the various programs that had grown from that night's events. The liaison program had volunteers explaining how it worked and sharing success stories. The therapy dog program had demonstrations of the animals that provided comfort and connection. The veteran support groups had information about services available to those who had served. The restorative justice program had panels discussing healing and redemption. Each booth and presentation reinforced the message that everyone had something to contribute, that the strongest communities were those that included and valued all their members. The highlight of the day was a ceremony honoring current invisible heroes, homeless individuals who had helped solve crimes, prevented dangers, or assisted community members in need. Each honoree received a certificate and a small stipend, but more importantly, they received recognition and validation. Their stories were shared with the crowd, showing once again that heroism exists in the most unexpected places. One woman had noticed a pattern in break-ins and provided information that led to multiple arrests. A man had found and returned a lost child to frantic parents. Another had prevented a suicide by talking to someone on a bridge. Each story reinforced the truth that Marcus had demonstrated. Invisible people see things others miss, and their observations and actions can save lives. As the sun set on that first Marcus Webb day, people gathered at the memorial for a candlelight vigil. They stood in silence, holding their candles, thinking about the invisible people in their own lives, the ones they passed without seeing, the voices they ignored, the potential heroes they overlooked. Then, one by one, people began to share commitments. I commit to stopping and talking to the homeless man I pass, every day on my way to work. I commit to seeing the humanity in everyone I encounter. I commit to listening to voices I might normally ignore. Each commitment was a small step, but together they represented a community's determination to continue the transformation that had begun 25 years earlier. The story had come full circle. From one moment of courage on a rainy night to a movement that had transformed how communities understood safety, dignity, and human value. The title that had once described a single incident, "Don't Talk, Homeless Man Saved Female Police After He Caught Something Shocking on the Street," had become a rallying cry for social change. It reminded people that the most important moments often begin with the simplest acts, that the most profound transformations can grow from the smallest seeds, that heroes exist everywhere if we're willing to see them. Marcus's legacy lived on not in buildings or programs, but in the daily choice to see the invisible, hear the forgotten, and value the dismissed. And so the story continues. In every city where someone stops to listen to an unexpected voice. In every moment when someone sees beyond appearances to the human being underneath. In every instance when someone chooses connection over division. The rain that fell that night washed away more than dirt from the streets. It washed away the barriers that separate us, revealing the truth that we are all part of the same community, all capable of heroism, all deserving of dignity and respect. The homeless man who saved the female police officer had done more than prevent a single attack. He had shown us all what becomes possible when we truly see each other, when we listen to every voice, when we recognize that heroes have no address, no social status, no uniform except the common humanity that binds us all together.